Stop what you're doing just for a second. Take a breath with me. There's so much to do in private practice and so many resources and trainings and things like that to focus on that we've brought it all together for you for a totally free event starting March 11th and going till March 14th. Level Up Week 2024 is coming up, and I want you to save that date. We have some amazing panels we're planning where we're bringing together people that have started a private practice, people that have started a group practice, and people that are rocking out mega group practices. Also, we're going to have some amazing keynotes and some trainings that are on very practical things. There's no need for you to bounce between Facebook groups wondering, is this advice good? What should I do next? I don't even know of the 50 things that I need to be working on what I should do first. Instead, come to Level Up Week. It's totally free. You can be on the early bird list over at practiceofthepractice.com/level up to get all the early notifications for when we open up registration. So again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/level up. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 962. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I hope you're doing awesome. I hope your life is leveling up in so many different ways. I hope your practice is leveling up. We're in the last month of the first quarter of the year. So how's your first quarter going? We're going to be talking today about all sorts of things around fulfillment in the work that we do. But just a reminder that kicking off on Monday, and that's going to be the 11th of March, Level Up Week is kicking off. We're doing 4 webinars a day, Monday through Thursday. We're going to have practice panels of people that are in solo practice, people that have just added their first clinician, and group practice owners that you can ask questions. You can, dig in and say, what is that like to start a practice? Or how did you know when to hire your first clinician? Or what's it like to be a 7-figure practice owner? I'm going to be doing some trainings as well on a variety of different topics. And we have some special guests coming in too. So if you want to see that full schedule, head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/level up. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/level up. And you can see the entire schedule, register for whichever ones look appealing to you, and you're going to be able to level up while other people are giving up. Can't wait to hang out with you over there. Now, I don't know what you wanted to be when you were little, when you grew up, but I still remember when I was probably 4 or 5, my parents lived by a train track, and the train always went by like probably half an hour after my bedtime. And I remember always waking up when I heard the train, and I told my parents that during the day I wanted to be an actor, and at night I wanted to drive trains. Like in my mind, as a little 4 or 5-year-old kid, I thought I would never have to sleep then. I could just drive a train at night, and I could be an actor during the day, and I could do whatever I wanted. I could enjoy, adventure, and I could enjoy being an actor. It's funny how much of our lives, go through reconfigurations, and some of those original things come back. Now, I'm not in acting, but I joined an improv troupe, and I've been doing that for 4 years and studied in Chicago for some intensives. I get to do this public facing work. Every one of my report cards would say Joey talks to his neighbor too much, and now I get paid to talk. And so finding those seeds within you and where you're going to find fulfillment in your career is one of the big things that we're talking about today. And I'm so excited today to have my guest, Greg Martin. Now, Greg is part of the founding team of Origin Merchant Partners, which is a boutique investment bank focused on mergers and acquisitions and working with entrepreneurs of all kinds every day. He previously founded and operated a restaurant, catering, and food e-commerce business, which he's since exited. In addition, he is the host of the Lifetime at Work podcast, which is all about exploring the careers of different people with the pain, struggles, and the fulfillment they can bring. Greg, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Yeah, well, you have covered some ground in your career. So let's just start with, tell me how you landed here where you're at.
Yeah, I really find it or have realized it's a journey. I think coming into it, like you were sort of telling in your story, you think like you're supposed to have it kind of figured out, and you kind of want to. And I think when you start your first job or your first gig, I don't know, I did anyway, sort of had this idea that I would, it was a beginning of a journey, but I started in this pretty intense world of investment banking, and it's very traditionally like 100-hour weeks, and just really intense, a lot of training, a lot of work. And so I did that, but I told myself, I'll do it for 2 or 3 years, and then I'll go do something else. And I hit the 10-year mark of still being in that same sort of, I mean, I moved up, but in that same career path, and had a bit of a crisis myself, and just sort of said like, oh geez, what am I doing? And so that's the entrepreneurial journey part of my career, my bio, where I went and was part of a food business that I helped found. And so the pandemic, however, was really bad to us. It was a office catering. We really focused on like office food and office lunches, and so it became
Oh
incredibly
man.
stressful for a while. And I just couldn't. It was just challenging to sleep. The anxiety was just incredible, and so I ended up actually through all that coming back to what I was doing before, the exact same company, actually, in the same sort of, investment banking type role, but with this whole different mindset. And in amongst that, as I was trying to figure out what the hell I was doing, I also started this podcast because I just realized with people my age, I was, mid 30s at that point, just that was the discussion we were having always was like, what are we doing here? Is this my job? Is this the rest of my life? Am I like, what else am I going to accomplish? How do I get kind of what I want out of my career and fulfillment and all that? And so, that's what I explore in the podcast as well.
Mm. Now, so you leave the job, you go do this food business, you come back to the job. Now, what feelings did you have around that? Like, did you feel like a failure with your head down? Did you feel like I tried it and it's okay? Or like how, because I feel like a lot of people would never come back to the job that they had left if they went out on their own. Like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, it was, I think because of the anxiety that I had, like I have never really had trouble sleeping and, ever in my life until that there's a pandemic, and I was worried about the business that I had created and what was happening, and just not even knowing what was gonna happen. I would wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. and then that was it. I was up, and I just it was so great to get past that anxiety of that I feel like I just I was fine with it. I honestly had just like basically submitted that I wanted to go back and do something that that I loved anyways, or that I liked, or that I knew, and that would make money. And I think, that kind of financial security was something that became sort of really important to me. I think when I left the role originally, I wasn't thinking about, I had saved up a good amount of money. I was, I felt financially secure for a while, but, I had not forecasted the pandemic. And so I think it was that anxiety that sort of made me sort of ignore any of what would be discomfort. And yeah, maybe there's a bit of discomfort or awkwardness at the beginning, but I got past it pretty quickly. So honestly, it wasn't really a huge challenge for me for whatever reason.
Mm. No, that's great. Um, so tell me, like right now, so you started the podcast and you went back to the old business, like what's your career look like now?
Yeah, so now and I think coming back, I really came back with a different perspective. When you go and you start a business, I mean, it's kind of, how people say you go and do an MBA to learn a lot, or you go and do like, it could be a master's degree or just something completely different. And it was really that was it for me. Going and doing kind of 2 3 years at my own business was just like an incredible learning experience. And when I came back, I had all these new skills, new perspectives. Like it was really weird to kind of come back to the same job, but just have a completely different mindset, and remember who I was, but kind of be different. And so that's kind of what it was. And so the way our firm is set up is that we're about 50 people, and about 20 25 of those people are their job is really, as you can imagine, just like you have your own practice. You are effectively covering a certain number of industries and companies, and I'm in the world of investment banking and M&A advisory. So we work with companies who are typically selling themselves, or looking for capital to grow. And so, you're advising companies on, strategic advice and that sort of thing. And so you really have to be confident. You have to go and get your own clients. You got to do a bit of sales and a bit of strategy, and you've got to wear a lot of different hats. And you kind of, if you can do a good job, you can make a lot of money. And if you don't, then you're not. And so, a lot of the skills I think that I learned somehow in being an entrepreneur, I think was able to translate a lot better into this role. Whereas, before I had, left the company in the first place, I had no confidence that I could ever sort of be one of those originators, one of those, people who were sort of business development, bringing in business. I never, yeah, I never thought I could do it. And I think, going out on my own gave me a lot of those skills, and I didn't think somehow led to the confidence. So somehow in this failing of a business, I actually sort of grew my confidence, I think, in being able to do the next thing.
So awesome. Now, tell me about the podcast. What have you been learning from that? Because for me, having a podcast, it initially started with, I had this small side gig private practice and I had a full time job. And I'm just thinking, I just need to get in front of people that can help me without paying them. Like, so I'd interview someone on SEO to learn that. I'd interview someone about websites and just ask the questions that I should probably be paying them for. And over time, gathered a lot of knowledge and have been able to launch a lot of different products and help people. What have you taken out of all of these interviews that you've done on the podcast around specifically career fulfillment? Like, what trends are you seeing? Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, it is interesting. I feel like I'm not a coach in any way around this career stuff. I sort of think of myself as, one, super curious myself in terms of what I need to do to enjoy my career. And I also find myself becoming senior. I've been in this role and in the world of finance for about 15 years, and I just by that point you get a lot of people asking you for advice all the time. And I put it on myself to try to make sure I'm giving them good advice and sound advice, and just something that is sort of well thought out. And I'm finding that a lot of the people that I'm interviewing, some of these things sort of pop out, and it's not even just who I interview, but as I talk to more and more people on my journeys about their jobs and what they do, they they don't always find fulfillment and joy from them. They really, most people I talk to, honestly, in a day to day, or when I go to pick up my kids and the other parents around, they really have this attitude that, like, hey, I'm just waiting till the week's done, waiting for Friday, and that's going to be, that's where I get to really live, and that's where I get to really enjoy myself. And I've worked really hard, I think, for that not to be the case. That always bothered me. It's bothered me, like, why is that the case? Why can you not enjoy your week? The week is so long, and
Hmm.
it's all this time. And so I think, as I've tried to pursue and push people on it through a lot of the interviews that I've done, it's like pushing people on this and trying to figure out, like, what do you really like about your job, and what are you getting out of it? And I think, I've come up with some certain things and certain takeaways that I think, resonate, or that I really find that, people mention, and that I also can relate to really well. But, you kind of over time start to see a lot of those same things about sort of what people are looking for in a job. And so I'm happy to give you a few of those, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that idea of just it being a long week and then people saying, "Oh, I just can't wait for the weekend." I remember that, when I was a foster care supervisor, that was 40 hours a week plus being on call evenings and weekends and then having my private practice. But yeah, that shift into slowly making your own schedule, testing out different things that are working or not working, is such a monumental shift. Yeah, let's dig into other things that you found that continue to help you and others to have career fulfillment.
Yeah, I think a few of the obvious ones. I mean, one is you got to always be moving somewhere. You've got to always, I find, anyways, it's super helpful to have goals, to feel like you're going towards them, and to be making progress. Every day is not always better. You're not always in a straight line making progress. Sometimes you go step backwards, but always having sort of that goal. And I think a lot of us stall in our jobs where, maybe we hit a ceiling of some sort, and there's not that promotion, or we get, maybe it isn't the promotion that we even want. It's more money, or it's a part of the job that we're trying to seek and we don't get, and then it gets frustrating. And I think we're always sort of seeking how to improve and how to get better. And I think that's really important in a job. And if you can't get it in your job, then maybe you do need to go and do something else, because we're always in this zone, I find, of just trying to learn and trying to improve ourselves, and that's really important. The other thing that I found is relationships are surprisingly important. A lot of times we don't think about those when we're thinking about our job and what makes it great and what we're striving for. A lot of times we just sort of go and work at a job because all I don't know, all of the traits of the job and what you want to do. But sometimes it's just a function of just being around people that are like-minded, that you enjoy their company. And that's, you spend so much time with these people throughout the week. I think it becomes, really important. And then I think, the third one maybe I'll mention that I find is, not necessarily the case for everyone, but I think is really commonly felt, is that you kind of want to be part of something. And when you've got, whether it be a leader or an organization that is doing good, and the good doesn't have to be something that's like, hey, I'm changing the world and making it for the better, but like you're progressing, you're employing people, you have something you can wrap your head around, doing good as part of an organization in your role, that people are, I think, increasingly valuing that and finding it, super important. And when they don't have that, when they feel like, their ethics or their motivations or desires, goals, whatever, are at odds with what the company is, then they just can't enjoy it because they don't feel like they're making impact.
Yeah. If you're looking for an awesome payroll solution, look no further than Gusto. We have used them for years here at Practice of the Practice. They keep me organized, we know how much taxes we're paying, and it's all done right, and you get pay stubs that look like any other company. Head on over to gusto.com/Joe to learn all about their payroll solutions. There is no reason that you should be worrying about payroll. Do it right. Head on over to gusto.com/Joe. That's GUSTO.com/Joe. A lot of our listeners are the owners of their company. When they think through employees or contractors that are doing clinical work, or admins or assistants, whatever the configuration is, what should they be thinking about in regards to career fulfillment for their clinicians and contractors and W-2 employees?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of it is that development, that you are, at the beginning stages of someone working with you. Yes, they're not going to have an incredible amount of responsibility, but I think, over time, as you trust them more and more, you can give them more. And just honestly thinking that through and thinking about, their goals and how you can help them get to their goals, I think is important, and having those conversations. So, you know, I think just, very high level and very simply, like if you can help them think about how they want to progress and where they want to get, sometimes that means, not in your organization. Sometimes that means that, they need to do something and need to develop the skills so that they can go out and do something else. And, I think, you probably don't want someone in your organization that is, that doesn't want to work there. And so, that may be inevitable, but, doing whatever you can to support that person, I think just sets you up so well for this, like, mutual, hey, we're trying to accomplish such and such together. And, it's just really, I don't know, it just becomes really important. If they don't buy into it, it's just, I don't know, I just find it's a very challenging and awkward work environment for both of you to work together, for them to find joy and fulfillment and all that as well.
Mm. Now, for yourself or for people that you interview, when you think about your daily habits, weekly habits, monthly habits, things that you do regularly that gives you more joy or helps you think through your career differently, what are things that you regularly do that you would say point to having more career fulfillment?
Yeah, I do think it's that people part of it is probably the one that I have to very deliberately do. We have a pretty open policy, or flexible policy, I should say, at our office, and you can go as often as you want into the office. And I'm probably 3 days a week because I have some young kids, and being home is helpful. But going into that office and making sure I take the time to talk to people, and it can be work related or not, is super important. Now, it doesn't always have me achieving my goals quite the same, right? You're kind of taking time away from work. You're maybe missing something or not doing something, but setting up a lunch or just having that kind of social time, I think is just really important. I'd say so. I'd say that from just a general of the week enjoyment. But the other thing I'd say is keeping track of your goals, like writing them down, is important. I do that. I probably at least once a month, I'm going back to kind of my plan and my strategy and what I said I was going to do in whatever way. It doesn't have to be overly comprehensive or whatever, just sort of writing down some goals with some timelines and saying like, hey, by this date, I'd love to do this. Or in the month of January, I want to accomplish that, and sort of going back to that and seeing how you did, and sort of benchmarking that for then the next time, trying to figure out how you can do better or achieve more, or applaud yourself for having done it. I think, that becomes just important, I think, in understanding sort of what you're accomplishing and where, how you are progressing in your role, in your job, in your, what, achieving what you're trying to do.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that idea of thinking through how do we how do we make sure we're doing work that for us lines up with our lifestyle right now? So you've mentioned your kids, multiple times. Like for me, same sort of thing. Like we live a few blocks from one of my daughter's schools, and so for me, it's important to walk her to school every day, pick her up from school. Most days, here and there, I might have an appointment, but my sister lives in my neighborhood, so all the cousins, we all walk to school. It's like Americana, totally neighborhood, like everyone waving to each other in the morning with their coffees. But that's important to me because I know that, you know, middle school, that transition with my older daughter, you just don't see as many parents. You don't get to know people as much. You don't, I mean, they jump on the bus and they come home, and I don't know hardly any of the parents that are not people that I met during the elementary school experience. And so, my work life then mirrors that. So my first appointment each day is going to be at 9:30, and my last appointment I wrap up by 3:30, and make sure that those are hard boundaries that I set. Um, so we can have the positive that we're kind of moving towards. So like better relationships, better connections, better work-life balance. But then also there's sort of the I'm not going to do these things. I'm going to set these boundaries. How do you think through boundaries and the edge of work where work and life start to get closer and closer to each other? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I would say I do something similar where, around 5 o'clock, I'm trying to shut off. However, I typically turn myself back on at, 9 or whenever have the kids are gone to bed. If I need to, it's not every night, but that's typically mine. What I try to do is, call it 5 to 9 is family slash, spending time with my wife time. And I really value that. Same with the weekends. I mean, I really try to, keep my phone. I don't have a lot of people have the watches now, like the Apple watches or something that they're just, even that much more always have it and always checking. And I've been getting better, I think, at just leaving my phone somewhere else and not checking it and not thinking about it. It's this, yeah, idea of just, it's one thing to spend time with these people, another just to like actually, incredibly be present. And I found it really challenging actually when I was running my own business to disconnect. It was a lot harder. It was just because especially when we were struggling financially, at the worst, it was just like, how could you not think about it? It was just, my kids would be talking and I'd be thinking about something else. And it was really, unhealthy. And so, my solution was honestly, you can't do it right away, but was to, get out of that situation ultimately and say like, hey, this to me wasn't as important as again being present with my family when we were having these times. And so yeah, I think you're not always going to make the right decision. I think that was my takeaway. You're not always going to make the right career decision. Sometimes you become super ambitious about things that you want to do, or a career or a new job. I have friends in that situation who, they just work too hard, and they even, you talk to them like, I'm working too much. I can't get it out of my head. I can't stop. Like, it's fun, but it's intense. And I think, at some points you have to make those decisions around, okay, I can't be doing this, or I need to, let my work team know, because it's just not sort of sustainable and not where I want to be.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, Greg, the last question I always ask is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Yeah, you mentioned that. The main biggest advice I usually give people is something around, not being able to change your boss. You can't actually; they're very hard to change. And in most cases of your listeners, I feel like they probably are the boss. And so I think, from my situation, I feel like, the best advice that I've really taken or think about a lot outside of that for myself has just been, that I think we have in our careers this idea that we'll do something, or we'll hit a mark, or we'll, something will change in the future, that things will be better in the future. And I've just learned over time that the future is right now. Like, what your enjoyment, your fulfillment, what you think of your life, what you think of your work is kind of now. And if you can't change that, or can't be in a place where you really like it right now, like, you need to change it right now, because you can't keep chasing sort of that, hey, it will be, now is the time, and now is the time to, enjoy it, and put yourself in a position that you, really like and really love and really are excited about. So yeah, that's a, one of my philosophies that I try to think about, as often as I can.
Mm, so awesome. Well, if people want to connect with you, if they want to just like learn more about your work, listen to your podcast, where should we send them?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out or search for Lifetime at Work podcast. It's also lifetimeatwork.com. And that's what I do: interview people, various people, mostly in the business world, about their careers, what the good, the bad, their journeys, career advice, and all that.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thanks a lot for having me, Joe.
Well, if you're looking for fulfillment at work, you want to learn more, go check out that podcast. And, this show is supported by some amazing sponsors. So Gusto is our sponsor today. That's the payroll solution that we use here at Practice the Practice for payroll. It makes it so much easier if you use Gusto. Head on over to gusto.com/Joe and use promo code Joe at checkout to get that discount. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. I almost forgot to remind you, remember, March 11th, that's coming up on Monday. That's when Level Up Week kicks off. Make sure you register over at practicethepractice.com/level up. I will see you there. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.